It's no secret The Last Jedi had its fair share of backlash. Well, a bit more than its fair share, I would say. On the whole, most really don't like it, many even going as far as saying that the director Rian Johnson raped their childhood. Oh boy. You may have seen my previous videos talking about the rankings of the Star Wars movies for me. I'll put them in the description if you haven't, but in them I try to explain that I'm a fan of Star Wars. I enjoy anything Star Wars related, and yes, that means I like the prequels, and also that means I like the sequels. That list does change pretty much every day, so if your favourite movie isn't at number 1, it probably was at some point in my life. But today we are here to talk about why I loved The Last Jedi. Now, it's the 8th installment of the saga, and it was built up by Disney to be pretty much groundbreaking. Before its release, Disney had announced already that they had planned on giving Rian Johnson his own trilogy to work on, due to the great work he had done on the film. Test screenings had gone really well, critics were raving about it. For me, this was somehow being built up to be bigger and better than The Force Awakens, which was a huge event. I think this was part of the issue. All the fans were on this massive high by the media, as we are being told about how great it was before even seeing it. This of course leading people to be very let down. That breaks my rule for watching movies. I'll go into this in a bit more detail in a separate video, but I have a rule that I try to stick to when watching movies. I have only ever broken that rule once, and that was for Avengers Endgame. I'll explain. Pretty much, my dad and I always go to the cinema, and he always says the same thing. He wants to enjoy it and understand it as its own movie, and that's the key point I'm trying to raise. I watch every film as its own property, not thinking about the hype, not thinking about how it links into a wider franchise. I'll think about that afterwards in a review, and I think that's the key to enjoying The Last Jedi. Think about it, I went into the cinema completely forgetting the other Star Wars movies before it, and what are some of the biggest problems fans raise about the movie? The first problem is usually how they treat Luke. But if I'm treating this movie as its own thing, then I don't know what Luke should be like. Issue resolved. Snoke. Most hated that he was killed, and killed so easily, especially when he was built up in The Force Awakens to be this big bad, with so much mystery unresolved. With those questions not being asked in The Last Jedi, you just accept there's this leader and he's betrayed. Issue resolved. I could go on and on resolving these issues, most likely not all of them, but most. Now, I know what you're going to say. It's part of a franchise, it's the second in a trilogy. It shouldn't be treated like a separate movie. You're correct. When you watch The Last Jedi as it is meant to be watched, as part of the franchise, you're given some moments of nostalgia, but overall, the story has been flipped on its head. There's so many contradictions to what we know as a Star Wars movie. But when watched separately, when watched without the backstory, you're treated to a large-scale battle scene, lightsaber fights, cool force powers, a classic teacher not wanting to help the student story. There's so much to love in this movie, there's so much to love in all movies if you look hard enough. Just don't make me look any harder at the Emoji Movie. My eyes can't take it. What I'm trying to say is that The Last Jedi fails as a sequel because of what The Force Awakens sets up. That's not to say it's J.J. Abrams' fault. I liked The Force Awakens. It was a little bland, but it was good. It is completely down to Rian Johnson. He didn't follow through with the setup. However, I am excited to see his own trilogy when it comes out. One where he can make all the rules and not have to try and stick to the ones already set in order to please nostalgic fans. I've talked about how I can see The Last Jedi and come away saying it's good, but what about the why I think it's good when taking into account the other movies? Well, even as part of the franchise, I had no issue with Luke's character. We haven't seen him in 30 years. That's 30 years of character development we haven't seen, and I liked it. Mark Hamill was brilliant. And I still take issue with the new cast. I haven't grown to like them the same way, except maybe Poe to some degree. Sorry, this isn't a review. I like the twists involved. Snoke dying is annoying, just because of the mystery, but the twists, especially with what we already know about Episode 9 and Palpatine, I think are good. This battle between light and dark within characters is an interesting dynamic and not something we have really seen. But going back to another issue that's resolved, Rey's lineage. She has no importance, she is a nobody. This could potentially be retconned in Episode 9, but again it works within a solo movie. I understand Rian Johnson's intentions in this film, and do believe he's going to make an interesting trilogy within the Star Wars universe, but his single film, placed within a story that had setups he obviously didn't want or plan for, it just didn't quite hit the mark with fans. I do enjoy this film when I consider it to be part of a franchise as well. As I've said many times before, it is one of my favourite Star Wars movies because of how different it was. Anyway, what do you think about The Last Jedi? Do you understand where I'm coming from? Or have you already disliked the video and now telling me how I should kill myself in the comments? Anyway guys, thanks so much for watching. See you next time.